Hi, I'm Mr. Williams, and this video is about photosynthesis. Before we get started, make sure you're taking good notes. Again, it's the process of writing the information down that helps you learn. It's not the information, it's the process of writing it down. Use Cornell style, use finger paint. I don't know, I don't care. Whatever floats your boat, take the notes. Before we get started on photosynthesis, quick review of what we were looking at. I went through respiration first. We eat food. It has glucose. Glucose contains energy in the bonds of the glucose molecule that once it gets into the cytoplasm, we start with glycolysis, which breaks it down into pyruvic acid. We get 2 ATPs and a couple of NADH2s. It moves into the inner membrane of the mitochondria, where it undergoes the Krebs cycle. We get a whole bunch more NADHs and FDHs, and we exhale carbon dioxide, breaking off carbon dioxide from the glucose. Exhale carbon dioxide. The electron, the NADH2s and the FADs move to the outer membrane of the mitochondria, where they go through the electron transport chain, moving down a energy concentration gradient, putting out a little bit of energy that we can use each step that we can use to attach a phosphate to an adenosine diphosphate to make adenosine triphosphate, and the final ion acceptor for the hydrogen ions is oxygen, creating water. If there's no oxygen, the electron transport chain doesn't work, and if you're an animal, you create lactic acid, which eventually recycles back to your liver and is converted back into glucose. If you're a yeast cell or some other organisms, you produce ethyl alcohol and carbon dioxide, alcohol fermentation. The whole process was based on glucose and oxygen. Where do we get those? From plants. Photosynthesis. And that's what we're going to talk about here. Photosynthesis utilizes the energy from sunlight. Remember, first law of thermodynamics, we cannot create or destroy energy. So we have to get it from somewhere, the sun. We take carbon dioxide, water, and we form glucose and oxygen. And I'm going to go through a really basic explanation of this. It takes place in the chloroplast. Hopefully you already knew that. This chloroplast is a pigmented organelle. It's very similar to the mitochondria. As a matter of fact, there are some scientists that think they have a similar origin, an evolutionary origin. It's surrounded by a double membrane, just like mitochondria. The inner membrane is stacks of photosynthetic membranes that are called thylakoids. You do not need to know that. Don't worry about the thylakoids. I'm going to show you all this. You don't need to know. I'm just giving you a background. All right. A stack of them is called a granum. Inside the thylakoid is a reservoir called a lumen, and it's full of proteins called a stroma. You don't need to know any of that. All right. What would it look like? Something like this. You can see up on the top up here, that is a electron microscope photograph of the side of of chloroplast, and you can see what I described as the stacks of granum. All right, which if we go down into a diagram, these are the stacks. They look like coins. I've seen actually better pictures of these of the thylakoid membranes, and they look like stacks of coins. And then if we take one of those stacks of the coin and we look at it, we get this whole thing here. This is one. This whole stack right here would be just this one right here. All right. You don't need to know that. I'm just giving you. This is what a chloroplast looks like. All right. And they're full of pigments. Pigment is any substance that absorbs light. All right. So look around you right now. If it has something and it's reflecting back to you, it has pigment. All right. My shirt is navy blue. All right. So it's absorbing all light except navy blue, and that's being reflected out. You can't see it because I'm going to make it clear, but the screen behind me is green. All right. It's reflecting, it's absorbing all light, but green. You look at I don't care what it is. If you look at this up here, if this were reflecting it on your computer, that would be the color red. It's absorbing all colors except red. It's a pigment. It absorbs color. Color absorbs light. The primary photosynthetic pigment is chlorophyll. Chloro mean green. All right, and there are five. You don't need to know this. You need to know about chlorophyll. Okay, that's a biggie right there. You kind of need to know about chlorophyll. All right, you should know that. Sorry. There are 5 types of chlorophyll: A, B, C, D, and bacterial chlorophyll. You don't need to know any of that. All right, chlorophyll A and B are the most common, and chlorophyll absorbs, like I said earlier, all colors except green. What color are plants? They're green. That's because you have the green, you have light coming down. I'm going to make this black, and it comes down, and all the colors are absorbed. Actually, I could do that a little better, okay? We have all the colors coming down all at once, and they're all coming down, but all of them are absorbed except green. Green is the one that's reflected back to your eye. That's an eye. And you see the plant is green. So whatever color you're seeing is the one that's being reflected. So what's being absorbed in the plant? Everything but green. There are other photosynthetic pigments. Carotenoids are yellow, orange or brown. Carotenes are orange. Think about that. Orange. Xanthophylls are brown. Phycobilins are found in algae and are red or blue. You don't even know any of that. I'm just telling you that there are other photosynthetic pigments. All right? And light is a type of energy. Remember, we can't create or destroy energy. So if we're using sunlight to make glucose and put the bonds of energy into glucose, it must be an energy. That's what it is. Sunlight is an energy. Okay? It's a particle that travels in a wave-like manner, but it does have mass. It actually can make things move. So it's energy that travels in a wave. It's a particle that moves in a wave, and it has energy. And when it hits certain molecules, it can move the electrons into an upper orbit, another orbit. So if you have the nucleus of an atom here, which would contain the protons and the neutrons, all right, and around it you have the electrons, what we talked about in Unit 2. And I'm just going to draw a whole bunch of them. Remember, there's only 8, but let's just pretend like that would be like 7, 8. And then the next ring, maybe there's another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know, something like that. Okay. Sunlight comes down, and it can excite in certain atoms, certain molecules. It can hit that electron, and it makes it excited. It adds energy to it. When you add energy to an electron, it jumps up into the next orbit. It's in a higher energy orbit. You don't need to know any of this. Just understand that when light hits certain molecules, the electrons in some of the atoms can move up in an orbit, becoming more energetic, having more energy. And that's what the plant takes advantage of. All right? There are 2 types of reactions in photosynthesis. One is the light reaction. It has to have light. And the dark reaction, which doesn't have to have dark. It just can work in the dark or it can work in light. Doesn't either. It's kind of a misnomer. I'll talk about that later. All right. The light reaction takes place in 2 photosystems. Photosystem 1, photosystem 2. It's like really complicated naming. All right. When light hits photosystem 1, it causes the electrons to be lost from the molecule chlorophyll. So you have a chlorophyll molecule here. Okay, and I don't care what the structure is. Light comes down and hits it. The electron jumps from that molecule out. Where does it go? Pass from molecule to molecule. Actually, it's probably like chlorophyll to chlorophyll to chlorophyll, and that electron jumps through, through a process called an electron chain. It's kind of like an electron transport chain, a gradient of energy. All right. After they've gone through, there's that term again, electron transport chain. Just like in respiration, it moves to the photosystem 2 where it loses an electron. Finally, this photosystem 2 loses an electron. So what we've done, real quick, we have a chlorophyll. We have light coming down. Whoo! It hits the chlorophyll. The electron jumps out. It jumps from atom to atom in each photosystem, and finally it goes out and is replaced by an electron from water. Kind of like the opposite of respiration in the electron transport chain, where the oxygen and the hydrogen atoms were connected to make water. Here, we're splitting water to get the electron to put back in to the photosystem, so the molecule's whole again. So we kick out an electron, it moves around, moving down this energy gradient, and we need to replace it. What do we replace it with? An electron from water. It's almost like the exact opposite of respiration, where we went down the electron transport chain and we connected it and made water. Here we're splitting it and putting it back into the photosystem. All right? So when we split water, we get 2 hydrogen ions and 1 oxygen ion. The hydrogen ions move to the lumen. They move into the cavity of the chloroplast, and the oxygen atoms bind together and are released in the atmosphere. And that's why you guys all know plants make oxygen. Where does it come from? We split water. That's why you have the water plants. But they split water. We get the hydrogen out, which we're going to use in a few minutes or a moment or two. And the oxygen, we don't need that, so it goes out into the atmosphere. Oxygen, plants produce oxygen. All right? So quick review. Simple light. The light reaction. Electrons are excited when they're struck by light. Light is energy. It hits them. The electrons in certain molecules are moved up to the next orbit. They're transported down an electron transport chain. Water donates the hydrogen ions to replace them, therefore splitting up the water into oxygen and hydrogen. The oxygen is released into the atmosphere. The hydrogen goes into the photosystem. The dark reaction, it's a misnomer. Again, it does not have to take place in the dark. It can, but it can also take place in the light. The light reaction has to have light because you have to have that energy moving into it to knock the electrons out. This just happens to work in the dark or the light. And it's sometimes known as the Calvin cycle, okay, named after Melvin Calvin, the discoverer. And what happens is carbon dioxide enters the cell, the very same thing that we split off of glucose to exhale, carbon dioxide. Now we're bringing it into the plant. We're going to take a 5, which is, again, carbon dioxide is 1 carbon. We take a 5-carbon molecule, which is RUBP. Don't worry about it. You don't need to know it. It's a 5-carbon molecule, and we're going to add 5 carbons plus 1 carbon equals a 6 carbon. But that splits into 2. It's unstable. So it splits into 2 times 3 carbons, called pGal. Now, pGal might sound familiar because you've heard of it before. It was halfway through glycolysis. We used ATP to split up glucose into 2 pGal molecules. And what we're going to do is just put those 2 pGals together to form glucose. So we have carbon dioxide coming in. We have this energy that we've gotten from the photosystems, the light and dark reactions. We're able to use that energy to take a 5-carbon molecule connected to a carbon dioxide called carbon CO2 fixation, and that creates an unstable, unfortunately, it's not stable, it doesn't stay together easily, a 6-carbon molecule that splits into pGal, and then finally we have the energy to put that together and it makes glucose. So, to review, photosynthesis, this is really, I'm not looking for the detail. Light is energy. A pigment is anything that absorbs light, whatever wavelength, all right? Plants absorb everything but green. The light energy hits the chlorophyll molecule. It excites an electron, which jumps out of it, moves through this concentration gradient, the electron transport chain, and to replace the electron that was moved out, we split water up to hydrogen and oxygen. Plants release oxygen into the atmosphere. They bring in carbon dioxide in the Calvin cycle, in the dark reaction, and we combine that with the 5-carbon, and it's very similar to the Krebs cycle. It's just a cycle that it goes constantly going through, and the last step is to attach that carbon dioxide to the 5 carbon to make a 6 carbon, but the 6 carbon isn't stable. It doesn't stay together. It wants to break apart, so it breaks apart into a thing called pGal, which, with a little more energy put into it, forms glucose. Photosynthesis. All right? Here's the thing that most people don't understand about plants. Everybody's got the idea. Animals, you and me, we inhale oxygen and we take in glucose, we eat, and we go through that whole glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain, and we exhale carbon dioxide and water. Okay, that's what we do. Plants, everybody knows this, plants, they bring in carbon dioxide and water, the very two things that we got rid of. They bring in carbon dioxide and water, and they get rid of oxygen and glucose. That's what they produce, right? But why are plants doing that? Plants are producing oxygen and glucose because they need the glucose for energy. They're actually using that glucose the very same way we are. So plants are doing both. Not only are they producing oxygen and oxygen and glucose through photosynthesis, but they're then using that glucose in the mitochondria, in the cytoplasm for glycolysis, and then going into the mitochondria for Krebs cycle and into the electron transport chain to make ATP, because plants need ATP also. So they're doing both. They're doing both. But they make it, in some plants, they can make that glucose in such quantities that they can store it in starch or in sugars. And those are the things that we eat, the vegetables and the fruits and things that we eat. Plants are doing both. That's the part that I don't think a lot of people understand. That people think is animals do this. They take oxygen and glucose, and they make carbon dioxide and water. And plants, well, they make carbon dioxide and water, and they turn it into oxygen and glucose. Yeah, but they're also doing this over here, too. They're also taking the glucose and the oxygen and turning it into carbon dioxide and water. They're doing both. That's the thing to remember. All right? Plants are making their food because they need our glucose also. All right. Hopefully it kind of makes the photosynthesis. Again, I don't go very deep into photosynthesis because I really think that we should really focus more on your body and what's going on in your body. But I think knowing something about photosynthesis is important. It did change the atmosphere in the earth. Before plants evolved, there was no oxygen, very little free oxygen, almost none. And now we have 20%, 18% oxygen. So it did change the atmosphere of the planet. But it is again in plants, both of them going on. It's key. We produce carbon dioxide and water. They need carbon dioxide and water to produce oxygen and glucose, which we need. Kind of a circle thing there, circle of life. Anyways, if you have any questions, make sure you ask them in the end puzzle questions. The end questions of the Ed Puzzle. God, I'm getting tired, sorry. The end questions of the Ed Puzzle, or ask me in class. Hopefully you took good notes. Good luck.